the Futurists. What are they?
Futurists, technically, are people, individuals who speculate about the future. That's technically what the meaning is. Technically, by the mainstream top label, it will be more somebody who could speculate on different areas. Kind of like there was a movie called Minority Report when Steven Spielberg made the movie. It was about the future, and they had a whole bunch of high tech gadgets. But in the movie, they were able to sort of charge crimes based on your thoughts. Or machines who could pick up your thoughts. They had in the movie, you walk past certain commercials, like certain billboards that would advertise a commercial into you. Now they have that, or they have that technology. When Steven Spielberg made that movie, he had to actually go to futurists for them to show him how the future would actually look like. I guess that's all futurists do. They basically
speculate. They basically speculate what the future will look like and how it will go based on current day technology and the rate of evolution it goes to. And it's funny because I read an article today, December 11th of 2012, and they were talking about in 2030, which is maybe not, give or take a couple of years, a decade or so plus, how they say it's going to look like a sci-fi movie already. And how some people are going to look like cyborg people, and they say basically, and the article said basically it's going to be a sci-fi.
Well, it's funny. If you keep track of science, like if you're a science buff, you keep track of it. Like that's not that unknown. Like they tell you, robots. I mean, they're gonna be. I know it sounds crazy, but they're gonna be people marrying robots by 2050. They say. And I was reading that like 10 years ago. By 2050, scientists say, 2050 people marry robots. I think they moved up the date now.
Crazy.
You even have people who would say, clones. Clones are gonna be regular people now. They're gonna have their own rights, and they're gonna be fighting. You're gonna have hybrid animals, have pigs, have horses,
which is basically already happening when genetically modified. They genetically modified a sheep to do a spider web, and then they've done modified pineapple to taste like coconut. So in a way, you can say, we went from the video from going shamanism is basically connected to nature. And then futurists obviously believe that because we have the consciousness and the capability of manipulating nature, then we must be superior. And because we're superior, this is something part of nature because it's how we are. So they can go ahead and do genetically modified humans, genetically modified crops, GMO foods. And now they're even talking about you can have designer babies. So instead of having just like two people meet and then whatever comes, you can actually manipulate the DNA or genetically modify the structure of your child so it can look like the designer child or designer humans. And so then you're going to have this whole bunch of designer people and the nature people.
Definitely. I mean, from my knowledge, the looks was part of it, but mostly the designer babies came in increased intellect, resistance to diseases, stuff like that.
Well, that's what they market it as.
Yeah. But that's the main premise of it, not just the looks. My God, intelligence.
Some people. Come on, humans are not that smart.
But the elites. This is for the elites.
Elites, of course.
The elites care about intelligence and stuff like that, and resistance to diseases and stuff like that. Like, of course.
So there's gonna be like a completely different type of human.
Well, I mean, it's gonna be human based on they'll be able to discriminate you based on you'll be able to walk past a scanner and they can look at you and tell your genes are not perfect.
Okay.
It's like that, which is real messed up. Futurism. You have the mainstream version of it, but then futurism, as it really is, kind of like the famous one that people talk about was actually a group called Club Rome. It's kind of like a branch of Illuminati where they would speculate in the future, but they were they more focus on population control. Futurism was actually a branch of the Illuminati, or what you would call the elites. That they the older branch focuses more on magic. They tend to focus more on technology, and in a sense, for them, they have it where they think that they're superior to nature. Whereas the older branch, because they deal with magic, they could believe they're superior to nature, but they kind of know you have to follow certain laws.
Right.
Where the futurists came in as some straight up gangsters, we could just rewrite the whole thing. We could cut down forests and we could put up cities.
They're basically the gods.
Yeah, they came in as straight up with the gods. We could replace.
It kind of sounds like.
Like what?
No, nothing.
Okay. So it's.
I don't be politically correct.
In a sense, it's kind of interesting because in a way. Futurists, to me, if you look at how things are going, they definitely have been. You could tell they've been getting the influence. They've been gaining power.
And it looks like they're also gaining power, but they're also trying to leave the planet.
well, there's different types of futurists. Some futurists believe that they have to leave the planet. That's a whole other story. Like,
Okay.
I will give you this: futurists are so lethal. A lot of them do have underground cities. Like,
Of course.
there's like cities. There's like cities where they tell you cannot get in if you're not part of the elites, if you're not smart enough. Like
Right.
the prerequisites probably would be intelligence, or you have to have the money, the connections.
Right.
They'd have something that they would actually say, we want you to be part of their world.
Right.
So they have their own kind of subculture going on. Where
Which is, people could say is exactly like the Illuminati, or they just definitely don't. They think they're better than everyone else.
Definitely. And it's and I don't really get into judgmental stuff or judging them or anything like that. I just like to say, what they are, like how they are.
I think they're going to think about this video.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really think about that, but
I know,
I
I'm
guess
just
they won't like it.
I'm just joking.
But for the most part, they're interesting because you can see how there's even people who, even our current love of aliens, that part of that stuff was actually futurists jumping in there. Believe it or not, like a lot of aliens are actually futurists. That's the crazy part.
No, of course. I mean, I always, that's what I was going to say earlier, but aliens, if you think of it, okay, fast forward to the future. Okay, so you have to use your imagination, but eventually you have these like perfect people. You have the regular people. They go off into their own little separation of everyone. They have their own technology. They advance. Maybe they leave the planet because the planet is becoming very. It's starting to go through its transition. They leave the planet. They colonize a different planet. They do their own futuristic stuff out there, and then they're kind of considered like aliens. So then the planet over here messes up everything. The cycle happens. You have your indigenous people. The Earth starts revolving all over again, and then the futurists will come back and be like, "Hey, we are your creators," right? Doesn't it kind of make sense if you think of it like 100 years from now?
Well, I mean, you could look at it like this. I mean, some people say some alien channels. They could say aliens are from the future who came back, our descendants.
I've heard people. Yeah, I've heard people say that.
So in a sense,
so it kind of makes you think.
So in a sense, you could look at it as future. I mean, it kind of makes sense because back in the days, if you were kind of trying to back in days, like in Lemuria or those type places, if you want to leave the planet, you would be thinking about macabres and spirituality.
Change yourself into the energy body.
But then another branch of human came in and said, "Yo, we could make a ship. You don't even got to be spiritual. Any mother ever off the street could just come in the ship and they could leave," and that changed the whole game.
And that's why they said that turning yourself into macabre is more connection to the all, which you could say is the mighty God that created everything. And then you have people who think of separation. But then that's only limited. Technology is only limited.
I mean, I have nothing against technology, but the futurists, they use.
It only keeps in third dimensional.
Yeah, I mean, technology if it's created from the ego, like you could have technology that's based on higher frequencies, like
teleportation and stuff like that.
Yeah, but even technology that's based on for instance, like in Kemet, when they used to build the pyramids, they used to make a substance that some people call monotonic gold,
right?
And they would shoot sound at it,
right?
And the pyramids will levitate off the sound, or because the monotonic gold or the substance like it, it's like very light, and they actually can levitate with certain sound.
Right.
They would actually be able
but they're not talking about frequencies.
But that's technology, though. But what I'm saying is, like, technology itself, if it's based on spirituality, is not bad. Technology we have today is not based on that.
Right, but the futurist is not thinking about spiritual alliances. I know. Yeah, okay.
I'm just trying to, because the thing is, you got a lot of battles over technology, good technology bad. I'm trying to address everybody.
Everybody, that's true.
So what I'm saying is technology as in the current form is bad because technology in the current form is a shortcut.
Right.
Even people don't know, even futurism in itself, trying to perfect your genes, that was what the alchemists would do. Like, they actually doing this stuff. This is not anything new.
It's right. It's like a futurist is kind of like the complete opposite of the alchemist, where the alchemists are trying to heal the body, but trying to just
through natural means.
Right, through natural means and healing it. But okay, that's interesting. Yeah. So it's kind of like two different spectrums. Yeah. The alchemist versus the futurist.
The futurist came in as a quick fix. Like, it's like, you a rich cat, and you don't have to be a good person, or you gotta have a little money, which is based on fake. I mean, it's not even real money anyway. That's another story. Mm-hmm. And then you could come and buy a perfect baby. So it's a shortcut. Mm-hmm. Whereas alchemy, you have to do the energy work. You have to actually some certain stars. It'll take like a few years.
It's just like money versus loyalty and dedication to the all.
No question.
Right.
So futurists are a more aggressive branch of the Illuminati. They're the branch that
no one really knows about.
Yeah, that doesn't even want, because all Illuminati, as much as people dog them out, they still have to follow certain laws because they do magic. Their whole stuff is based more on occult.
And magic is associated with nature.
Yeah, so they still have to follow certain laws or something. The futurists, that's why that was their motivation to replace, to build the cities. It's kind of like they wanted to like if you cut down the trees, like in old Europe, trees were associated with gods. So you would pray to a tree, and tree spirits was the gods in some part of Europe. So when they cut the trees down, they would say the gods are gone. So
and the same thing with Kemet, Naturos, which is nature, right?
So if you in a sense, if you replace the natural environments with the city, you could bypass all that earth element or the laws. That's what the futurists kind of have. So you have the mainstream version of futurism, which is speculating the future, but then you have that darker version that wants to conquer nature.
Right. So it's interesting. Okay, that's really interesting. And it's pretty dark.
Well, I mean, for me, I've always pushed. We always try to push yoga, alchemy, and magic, and I think that's the only way you're gonna even the score. If you don't got money, if you don't got whatever, you have to go back. You're gonna have to go back to the tools of your ancestors to do it to actually even the score. If you don't do that, they are gonna win and overwhelm the planet.
And what happens if they win over the planet?
Well, the planet just cleans up. Like they're not gonna really win. That's why some of them want to leave. Some of them want to leave or go underground because they actually have known you could actually escape. Other cultures before, like the city, when people talk about the city that leave the earth, some people have actually known that you could actually escape by going underground.
Right.
So a lot of them have that in their mindset where they say, well, if things go bad, we go underground.
And at the same time, they also talk about colonizing Mars, and you can go to the moon if you have just enough money to, So it's interesting. Like it seems like there's so much things happening that a lot of people are not in the know of.
Exactly. But I would have to say, if you want to even the score, you better practice real spirituality and be able to fuse into everyday life.
Which is true, because if you think of them, I mean, they're very a close knit family, and you can't just say, "Hey guys, I'm really cool. Let's work this out." You have to have the money. You probably have the connections. You probably have to pass a lot of securities, and eventually it's getting to the point you're going to have the genetically made. People talk about bloodline. All the bloodline of like the royal families of the Illuminati, whatever, which is like the old Illuminati. But if you think of the current way, now it's just genetically, instead of bloodline, they genetically modify you.
But it's true, but it's still bloodlines because they only let certain people do it.
Right, of course. So they're not going to genetically modify anyone, but it's like taking the bloodline, but then it's an evolution into the bloodline, into that bloodline, into genetic modified, which basically is saying, the majority of people are not going to get that. The bloodline and the genetically modified and the secrets and stuff like that. So then people are going to be like, well, what about us? So then you're like, well, you better, I don't know what's going to happen with that. But it's just different.
I think people have to just expose themselves to information, and they have to get into real spirituality. And be able to get, when I say real spirituality that you can use in everyday life.
But then there's all different types of information out there,
Of course. Well,
and some of the information is like, come on.
But if they practice real spirituality, they'll be able to predict.
And that's why I tell people, like, you should always use your intuition. Your intuition's there. It's kind of a safety mechanism. It's a part of survivalism. If people just get into it, cut themselves from the distractions, because there's a lot of distractions intentionally put in our face, you can scan and like what feels right. And don't logically make it up like, oh, well, this is my religion. This doesn't say this. This is according to this. Just feel it with no thought. And then just go with it, because we all have it. We just have to be more able to tap into it or remember it.
I agree.
So, anything else you want to talk about them? We got a couple of minutes.
I mean, I just think you could look up Futurists. It's
yeah. What are some good resources for people to look up?
Just look up Futurism. Look up the science of it. Like, I think people get lazy.
The darker part. How do people research about
Club
that?
Rome. How about that? Look up Club Rome. That was the version of Futurist, part of the Illuminati. Look that up. You give you everything you want to know about Club.
Oh, wait, you can get us in trouble.
Okay, so I'm not gonna, you wanted to ask about where you.
I know. This is a conversation. I know people will be like, I want to research, and they should research it.
People are lazy. Like, look up Futurism first before you go to Club Rome. Look up the science. Like, people have to get into looking up research.
A lot of people, I'm not gonna lie. A lot of people just want you to hand over all the information.
I don't placate to them though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you ain't gonna get that from me. Like, you're gonna have to
that's the thing, is like a lot of it is like a lot of the information is just to initiate a thought process within you, so you can hopefully get into it and research it yourself. Some people are like, I want to see research. I'm like, why can't you just research it yourself? The information's out there.
If you want to research Club Rome, how about that? Population control. I mean, them guys have been around since the 60s.
Conspiracy theory, yay or nay?
Is it a futurist? Not conspiracy. That's why I said look it up officially, because futurism is not conspiracy. That's an actual science.
No, of course. There's. I mean, if you go to Netflix, they have like, I forgot the guy's name, but he says, I'm a futurist, and this is how the future's going to look like.
Like I said, and look it up. Like, they actually trying to make.
They have documentaries and stuff about
marry robots now, and robots. I mean,
that's crazy. Marrying robots. I guess a lot of guys would like that. I mean,
I'm just saying, like, it's not a conspiracy. Like, you could look that up.
Of course. I mean, there's even a documentary I saw, and like, It was one of the documentaries, and they were talking about guys who are looking forward to getting
Oh,
hooked up with.
robots are gonna be popular. I already know that.
Oh,
A lot of people are gonna be
God.
married in robots and stuff like that.
Talk about taking the emotion out of a relationship.
I mean, we're becoming a materialistic society on all levels. We're losing our souls. So, I guess that's another topic.
All right, peace.
Peace.